Well, good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to today's City Board of Directors agenda meeting for April the 30th, 2019. This is our opportunity to review the agenda for our formal board meeting that will be held on May the 7th. We have some presentations today. Director Campuris, you're up.
Good.
And everyone know this is literally Director Campuris' baby. He spends a lot of time and attention in the sculpture garden, and we just want to give you a hand for that type of time and attention that you do. And you did pay me for that.
Yes, you did. I did, but not near enough. This is a paid announcement. Well, this Friday night and then the weekend is Sculpture at the River Market, and the Friday night is the show and sale, is the preview party, and then the next two nights is open to the public and free. And all events are in the River Market pavilions this year, differing from last year. Scott, you want to go to the next? Each year we have a contest where participants at the preview party help pick the next piece of sculpture that goes in different places in Little Rock. And what Scott has done is gone through and has picked and shown you the pieces that we have placed since we started this contest. Starting in 2011 with Chapel down on the river, then Brian Massey from Conway, Ted Shaw is from Colorado, Laurie Aycock is Joan's favorite person in the world, having done a great piece of sculpture also at the dog park. Michael Warwick is at ULR. Clay Enoch is in Colorado, in Colorado Springs. This is probably, as far as a significant piece, the most significant piece we've put in. To my knowledge, this is the first and only piece of sculpture that's been placed on the Central High campus in forever, I guess. Isn't that right, Bruce? The Stephen Shastman did the one last year, and we put it out at the Southwest Community Center. And on Thursday, if the truck is going to be a little bit delayed because it's snowing in Colorado now, will be placed Thursday sometime in Riverfront Park near the Broadway Bridge where the bike ramp comes down. Each year we have the contest as above mentioned, and I want to show you the pieces of sculpture that we're going to place, and it's particularly important this year because it's going to go on the corner of City Hall. That tree that you see is leaning at about a 45-degree angle and will be taken out, and this will mirror the piece of sculpture across the street at the convention center. There are 7 pieces that will be considered that people will get to vote on Friday evening. Scott, next. The first one is by Teresa Dyer, and this is 2 children, actually they're 2 men or 2 young boys, that one's African American and one is Caucasian, looking up at the same star. The stainless steel piece behind it has a light that illuminates their face as if they were looking up at the stars. And so it's a very innovative piece. This is her first time in the show this year. This is from Clay Enoch, who has had several pieces here. And this is, again, going along with what happens at City Hall. It is a group of people doing different activities, but everybody's coming together. So that you're either playing or biking or reading or writing or doing something that shows unity and people coming together at City Hall. This is a piece by a man named Nambi, who is from Atlanta. And again, with the theme of people all coming together, it's 3 relatively amorphous people all working together to make a unit and people talking about being together and talking together. This is a piece by a man named Joe Norman, who is also new to the show. And it is a kinetic piece, and it is yellow butterflies, and as they turn around, if everything hits exactly at the right time, what you see is the word spelled out homeward. So we're all coming back home to City Hall and what's going on. This is a gentleman named Ryan Schmidt, who is actually from Benton or Bryant. He has shown pieces all over the world, and actually has a piece that the First Lady put in at the Sculpture Garden at the mansion. And his piece, again, shows unity and coming together. This is a stainless steel piece. This is a man named Charles Strain, who again talks about a very figurative coming together. So people all coming together and acting as a unit. He is, I think, from Missouri. And then this is Basil Watson. Basil was here for the first time a year ago. He is actually a Jamaican artist who lives in Atlanta. He has just gotten the commission to do a 9-foot bust of Martin Luther King for Atlanta. And this is a woman crossing the finish line, and it's supposed to represent women breaking barriers as they go across a finish line. So those are the 7 pieces. If you come to the show Friday night, you get to vote on the final 3, and then on Sunday afternoon, the piece that we'll put in a year from now, because it takes about a year to get one of these things ready, is done. So thank you. And just to remind you, the city of Little Rock, a city of 200,000 people, now has almost $4 million worth of sculpture that has been donated. So it is not a, we have to take care of it, but once a year people come, and it costs us around, what, John, $4,000 to clean the sculptures, and that's all we have to do for a year. So it is a relatively maintenance-free operation of what we do. So thank you, and I hope you come.
Well, and Dean, I just also, Director Computers, just again want to recognize you. I know you spend every Saturday. You would not recognize him on a Saturday. He has on his khakis, his tennis shoes, and he's cutting grass, and he's taking care of the weeds, all part of that process. And we just really do appreciate what you've done from a cleanliness standpoint, but also in bringing all these world-renowned artists to locate and showcase their artwork here. It's truly a great example of how we can unify our city. And I think what we have to do is continue to highlight what's going on in the Sculpture Garden, make certain that everyone is aware of that and utilizes it as we move forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We now have a presentation from Arkansas Museum Association Distinguished Museum Professional of the Year, Mr. Stephen McAteer. John? And before you come up, we want to recognize, no, keep going. Sorry about that.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. Very proud to be here today. At the 2019 Arkansas Museum Association, the City of Little Rock's MacArthur Museum of Arkansas Military History received 2 awards. The first award went to the museum's executive director, Stephen McAteer, as he was named the Distinguished Museum Professional of the Year. Stephen has led the museum since it opened in May of 2001. Prior to its opening, Stephen worked for 2 years to get the building and exhibits ready to open. When he started, the museum did not even officially have a name or an exhibit plan. Working with the MacArthur Military History Museum Commission, the name was chosen. Stephen created the plan for the opening exhibits and did much of the work to make the exhibits happen. Under his leadership, his museum has established itself not only as a destination for tourists and other visitors, but through education offerings, the museum is a favorite stop on field trips. It is also used for special events and meetings throughout the year. Stephen received the award not only for what he has done in creating the museum, but also for his leadership during the recent 6-month-long restoration of the building. Before bringing Stephen up here to speak, I also wanted to highlight the other award. He can discuss both of them when he comes up to the podium. The second award the museum received was for the outstanding achievement in collections care conservation. The museum was recognized for the renovations in the Arsenal building. The museum closed in March 2018 for extensive structural work. The $1.5 million renovation for the structure included both interior and exterior upgrades. The first phase of the project, which began in December of 2017, involved renovation to the north and south porches and was partially funded by a historic preservation restoration grant from the Department of Arkansas Heritage. The interior renovation includes upgrades to the heating and cooling systems, installation of new lighting, and repainting of interior gallery spaces. Funding for the renovations came from proceeds of a hotel tax which was approved by Little Rock voters in February of 2016. One final comment about Stephen personally. I would say that if you were born to do a job, this man was born to do this job, and I'm so proud of him, and he deserves every honor that he gets. So please join me in congratulating Stephen and the museum for these honors from the Arkansas Museum Association. Go ahead.
Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure to come. It's a pleasure to receive recognition from your peers in the Arkansas Museum Association. We were honored last month's conference to receive both of these awards. I will stress, though, that these awards have to be shared with a lot of other individuals, and I would just like to take a few moments today to recognize those. Of course, my museum staff. They are not here today because they're doing what the museum staff does. They're doing programming. Shane Lind right now is doing his after-school reading program at the Stevens Community Center that he does on a weekly basis. And Reveille Isgreg is getting ready for the MacArthur Park 5K, which, weather permitting, I think this will be the 12th year that we've hosted that there in MacArthur Park in front of the museum. They had a very challenging year this year, dealing with preparing to close the museum, getting everything moved out, continuing to operate a museum off-site and on-site from the basement of a building without air conditioning during the long, hot summer, dealing with me during that stressful time, then getting everything moved back in, and then reopening the museum in the fall and rejoining the museum community and getting back in the queue with all the other museums in our great city. So they deserve a large share of the credit for this award. Thanks to John Eckert and the Parks Department. There are just certain things that you can't do without help from a department, such as hanging a 16-foot ladder from the ceiling or picking up a 600-pound cannon tube and putting it in an exhibit case. And he provided personal support during this process and departmental support, and I will always be appreciative for his trust during this process. Thanks to the city. Since this project was funded in 1999, you have provided crucial support every year that has enabled us to develop the partnerships with other museums, with other organizations, entities, personal, private, corporate individuals who have helped us do a lot more than a small museum of our budget could be expected to do. And so I thank you for providing that core support from year after year. And then finally, there's a great group of individuals that I have the privilege of working with on a monthly basis, and that is the Museum's Advisory Board that you all appoint here on the city board. And several of them are here today. In fact, we were joking earlier that we have a quorum here. We could actually conduct business if we wish. And I would just like to take 1 minute to recognize them by name, and as I name them, if they would stand. And these are people who this past year especially have been so instrumental in, to me, providing a shoulder to cry on or an ear to vent into, and to provide financial and moral support. And I'd like to recognize them: Chip Culpepper, Jim Von Tuglin, Sharon Priest, Joe Keegan, Paula Furlow, Patrina Robinson, Jake Tidmore, Helen T. Lee, Pat Hoy, Hayden Rather, David McDaniel, Don Castleberry, and Kermit Tracy. So I would like to personally give them a hand for their support during this time. I could take a long time tonight discussing at length what each of these individuals and the other members of the board, including past board members Ron Fuller and Glenn Davis, have done over the years to make the museum what it is today, a shining jewel in MacArthur Park next to a wonderful art museum that we're excited about what's happening there and look forward to their reopening in 2.5 years and the great things that will happen for MacArthur Park at that point. One last thanks, and that is to Brian Day. 20 years ago this month, he hired me to this job, and I will tell you that was the best decision he ever made. So thank you, Brian, for your role in this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much again. We really do appreciate everyone's hard work. We'll now have a presentation for Rights After Wrong. Presentation with, I'm sorry, Director Peck.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to personally thank Stephen McAteer as well. The city hosted Operation Song, which is a retreat pairing professional Grammy-winning songwriters with veterans to help, to help tell their stories. This is our second one at MacArthur. People from all over the Southwest travel to be here. They do this in venues all over the country. Their home is MacArthur. And Stephen, that is because of you and your staff. Mac Park Group, this is our oldest city park. It's such a jewel. You are the consummate professional. You're so passionate about what you do, and I cannot thank you enough. You made me so proud. Thanks.
Director Wright.
Thank you. Mayor, I just want to thank Mr. McAteer and MacArthur Park for their community outreach. As you know, a lot of kids will go on field trips to MacArthur, but that they're not exposed to museums and art and all the time. But what you bring to the community centers in the form of the reading program is very, very beneficial. And I thank you for that, because what it does, it assists the park staff without having to have those expertise. You bring it in. And so I want to commend you, and I heartily hope that you continue that program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now have Mrs. Erica Benedicto to discuss the Rights After Wrong.
Thank you, Mayor. Greetings, Mayor, members of the board, City Manager. I'm so happy to be here. Again, my name is Erica Benedicto. I'm the Diversity Program Manager for the city's Racial and Cultural Diversity Commission. So you may have heard of Rights After Wrongs, and it's a very community-rich event that we do every year for the past 3 years. And when I say community-rich, I mean a lot of people, a lot of organizations come together to make this event happen. From the Commission's perspective, this is a day of service to recognize Dr. King's official birthday in January. I do have some planning partners present that I would like to acknowledge before I go any further. These people are very instrumental in helping us pull it together. They're just really strong in sharing resources and being a great organizer. So W.J. Monegal, April with the Little Rock Workforce Development, April Cheryl Beers with the Central Arkansas Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, Dolly Fountain with Department of Workforce Services, Deborah Center, Rock City Reentry, Nicole Freeman, Racial and Cultural Diversity Commission, Denise Chai. Okay, she said she'd be here. Oh, okay, all right. And Angela Tolbert. Okay. So everybody shows. So these are just a few of the partners that really help pull this together. Certainly, Lita Anthony is a really strong partner in this with the Central Arkansas Reentry Coalition. You are going to hear from her shortly, and in April in just a moment. Next slide, Scott. So, like I mentioned earlier, we do this to honor Dr. King, and we normally have this event the Saturday before the official holiday. And some of the service that we provide the community with this event, several things we help with. Some people call them expungements, but the attorneys like to call it sealing criminal records, petition to seal. Leniency court, this is for people with outstanding fines of misdemeanors or failure to appear. And the really great thing about this event is that people can come in and get their issues addressed before the court without fear of being arrested. Employers are there offering jobs and doing interviews. There's health screenings. There's driver's control there. You'd be so surprised how many people need that service. Free legal consultations, even free taillight repair. This is our third year, as I mentioned earlier. 2019 and 2018, WJ has been very instrumental in making sure that we have a space, we have a home. And so for the past 2 years, we were at the Department of Workforce Services on University Avenue. Our first year, we were at St. Mark. For 2019, I would say this is an aggregate. We were able to at least collect cards on 975 participants. We believe we've reached more, but of course, we've collected data for sure on nearly 1,000 participants. So when a person shows up for the Rights After Wrongs event, the first thing they're going to get is a welcome and a smile, and they're going to be presented with a data collection card. And what they have to do is complete this card. They do give us some information, some demographic information, just so we'll know who we're reaching. But then we quickly want to know what type of services they're looking for. We have volunteers that help collect this information, and April is going to actually tell you what data we were able to glean from collecting this information over the past 3 years. Next slide, April.
All right, we're ready. So this is where it showcases exactly who is actually participating with the event between female and male. And you can kind of see how the difference is leaning more toward the male than the female, but as years progress, it is going up, and it's going up in percentages. So in male, it was 70% the first year, and then the second year is around 62%, and the third year is 61%. So it is increasing in between male and female. And then if you look closely at the age of the participants is between, the highest numbers between 26 to 35 and 36 to 45. That is a majority of who participates with the on that day of the event. That's around 54%. Move on to the next slide. This is actually showing the demographics and nationality, which is leaning heavily toward Black, but we are increasing in white as well and other nationalities. This is breaking down the breakdown of the counties. I want to focus on this, but I want to move on to the next slide. This actually breaks down the central region, and you can see that Pulaski County is the highest, but there are other, this is showing 875 people out of the total years that we've been doing this have been participating with the program out of the central region. And this is just showing everyone that is actually coming and participating from all over the state of Arkansas to this event. Moving on to the cities, and this kind of breaks down the particular cities that are participating as well. And if you look at North Little Rock and Little Rock are the highest. But we are getting West Memphis, we're getting all the way from one end of the state to the other. This is actually where, to the different wards, you can focus in on who is actually participating in your area. And this is a breakdown per zip code. And that's part of the survey that we're collecting the data. They are providing their zip code. So you can see go back. You can see the years that we participated with St. Mark in 2017. You can look at 72204. That is the highest number that year. Then when we moved to this year, and I think we did more publicity this year, and we hosted it in 72209, the numbers raised to 97 people, which is the highest per zip code. Moving on. These are the services that we actually provided each year. And you see in 2017, we didn't offer as much as we did in 2018 and 2019, but we did have a good turnout. But in, just to close it out, if you see the more, she's going to summarize, but in summary, to close it out exactly, but the participation is reaching 1,000.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the board. You might be wondering why we present this information. Let me share some additional information. 500,000 people within the state of Arkansas are qualified to have their records expunged. This is from the Arkansas Administration of Courts. 96,000 Arkansans are not on the employment rolls anywhere. This is from the Arkansas Department of Workforce Services. Under 4% unemployment rate. This is also from the Arkansas Department of Workforce Services. Conservatively, we still in Arkansas have a 56% recidivism rate, but more realistically, it's more like 62%. This too is from the Arkansas Department of Corrections. Rights after wrongs is a practice, is a best practice that demonstrates a wraparound services that is being provided by state agencies, county government, local government, healthcare systems, housing authorities, community-based organizations, corporations, employers, legal services, community service providers, and lots of volunteers. It takes all of that to make sure that a person has an opportunity to be mainstream back into the community. This work has been noticed by other communities, as you saw so many of the folks who can't get these services in their communities come to the capital city. As I said several years ago to Director Campiris, they come here because they perceive as a capital city we have more. So they want a part of that more as they absolutely try to make their opportunities back into the community. Some of those communities that have requested information and really have come to us to ask for technical assistance includes Jonesboro, Fort Smith, Forest City, Pine Bluff, and just this afternoon, Blytheville. The recent Delta caucus that was just held over the weekend over in West Memphis had a three-pronged focus to making sure that communities were safe, stabilized, growth was realized, and successful health outcomes. They were education, the job workforce, and reentry. In a few months, the members of the steering committee will begin planning for Rights After Wrong 2020. This just doesn't happen. This takes a whole lot of hours, and because we have a template, it's not as bad as it was the first year. But yet it still takes getting the information out there and making sure that our partners are still interested. This year, it is tentatively planned for January 18th, which again will be on the Saturday before the actual holiday on January the 20th. Tonight we come with an ask, and of course you should have known that we need something when we're busting the seams at Workforce. We're in need of your recommendations and your assistance in finding a new location. And it can't be just any location for a lot of reasons. In order for us to meet the needs of the people that we serve, we need a large, huge space for the providers. We need separate office spaces for our lawyers to give confidentiality to the many clients they see. This year, we had the opportunity to invite in the circuit clerk's office. You can't imagine what a plus that was to have the circuit clerk's office there to provide copies of individuals' records right on the spot so they could see the lawyers. We have healthcare providers who often provide testing for individuals, so there's some private space there. The building must be Wi-Fi because, again, those individuals who use computers have to have access to internet to look at records and to also assist the individuals in getting their records sealed. we need ample parking space. One of the reasons why we know our count is not as good as it could have been is because at Workforce, we were limited with parking space. And it also must be on the bus route. So many of the people that we give services to do not have vehicles, but they are able to get there with cars. This is a great, great service. And it is great because, again, I'd like for some of the folks in the room to just stand up who provide services here. Come on, team, stand up and let them see you. And this is just a small portion of the soldiers and warriors that have the heart to do this work. It doesn't just happen. It happens because people care. It makes a significant difference. We can tell you about one guy that we kind of touched on. He got out of incarceration on January the 15th. He came to Rights After Wrongs on January the 19th. Through the program at Workforce Services and through Deborah Center and W.J. McConnell and the Rock City program, we got him into a CDL class. He completed that class within 3 weeks at 97%. He now today owns his first truck and is working on his second truck so that he is able to hire other people who come home like he did. And it's just one of many, many successful stories that we have to share. But this afternoon, as we begin to get together in another couple of months, because we start usually about the month of July planning this event, we would like your help in finding a new home for this great service that we provide to this community and so many others. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now have a presentation, our golf study presentation from Dan Snyder and Phil Harrington.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Directors, City Manager. We first thank you for giving us an opportunity to present the study that Phil and I have put together. We have spent a little over 3 months accumulating information, the purpose of which is to give you a strategic analysis of the supply and demand and the economics of the public golf situation in Little Rock. Let me say up front that the situation here is not unlike most cities in the United States. The trends in golf, as you will see with the numbers and the data that we give you today, will show that. I will tell you that John Eckert did tell me 3 times before we started I don't have to make a long presentation, so I'll talk quickly.
Thank you so much.
As I said, we conducted a strategic review of all the city golf assets and operations to include facilities, conditioning, personnel, marketing, all the aspects of what makes each facility work or not work. We looked at to develop options that could improve the quality of the existing facilities and what we have and the programs that we have. We also we have developed some options that we want to give to the city to either eliminate or at least reduce the city subsidies in what we're doing. I'm sure you all know that that is substantial. The strategic review of the city golf assets were mostly on site. We made several trips to each facility. We met with the managers and some of the personnel that work there, and we looked at their programs, we looked at marketing, we looked at budgets, we looked at revenues, we looked at expenses. We did an extensive review of demographics and the demand for golf in those areas. We utilized several different entities from around the United States to help us with that. We looked at the historical usage of the different golf courses and their performance. We also took a look at the land that was adjacent to the facilities that we have now and possible uses or repurposing of those lands. We went out to identify and compare competitive markets locally and regionally. We did on-site visits out of state as well as around the state to look at other public facilities and what they were doing and how their operations worked and the financial aspect of how they were doing. And then at the end, I would say, in this report, we will summarize all these results, and we want to give you some options that we think you have to make, understanding that this all began, the decline in golf, as you may or may not know, began many years ago, particularly in 2006 is when the downturn really started. It's not just in Little Rock, it's not just in Arkansas, it's nationwide. And there are reasons for it. Some are controllable, some aren't. But hopefully from the data that we give you today, you will see some options on how we can improve some of the existing facilities and how we can make changes that will help the financial performance and take the burden from the city.
There's a lot of detail in the report, and we are trying to save you from at least some of it. There was a time when municipal golf was the only way for average citizens to have an affordable way to play the game of golf. That was the service, and frankly, municipal golf had a monopoly in that area. That has fundamentally changed. As illustrated by this statistic, there are 4 city golf facilities in this area. And whereas 30, 40 years ago that might have been it, today there are a total of 15 public golf facilities. The others privately owned, but they're all available to the public. So the competitive situation has changed dramatically. Another key point, based on statistics from the National Golf Foundation, and all of our experience bears this out. For our 4 courses, it would take 120 to 140,000 rounds annually to break even. In 2018, we played for all 4 courses combined 50,000 rounds. So we are at about 36% of the volume that we need to be able to just break even. The next slide simply shows a listing of courses in the area, and its only purpose is we sometimes forget how many options that the public has. On the next slide, the circumstances Dan mentioned for city golf here in Little Rock is typical. It is not the exception. This change in role for municipal golf has happened all over the country. The typical response is cost cutting, because candidly it's just about the only response available to most municipalities. The cost cutting invariably lowers the demand because the quality goes down. And then the lower demand and lower usage, then more cost cutting. And that spiral doesn't just increase cost, but over time it literally balloons them, as we'll see here in just a second. Simply put, you cannot cut your way to prosperity. And I would add these 3 points. Number one, the conditions today are the same as they were 13 years ago. The underlying market conditions, numbers are bigger, but the underlying market conditions are the same. There was a report given to the city in 2006, and I quote, "In city golf, we are waging a losing war," end quote. Second thing I'd tell you is that over that 13-year period, the city has done an outstanding job of managing its assets. Nobody may be happy with the result, but there are only certain tools available to them, and they have done an outstanding job of management. And the third point is this, and thankfully it's your decision, not ours. The data suggests that only a major fundamental change in the way golf is approached by cities will lead to a real solution. Incremental change will not have any real effect. The next slide shows some market comparables that simply bear this out. They were selected from about 30 different ones. You can see up there are 2 facilities that played in this area that played under 30,000, what their losses were. There is a facility locally that played right at 30,000 rounds and made $220,000 last year. In a broader regional area, you'll see next to the bottom, 30,000 rounds doesn't guarantee break even because that course lost $100,000. In a more affluent area, 38,500 rounds did in fact produce a profit. The next slide is just a graphic illustration of the deficit, and the next one shows you a little more detail. Remember I said the losses don't just increase, they balloon over time. Well, they have ballooned from 2006, when the city was funding $134,000, to the last 3 years, where the city is funded between $1 million and $1.2 million. Some of the numbers are skewed in 2018 because there were some non-recurring items at First Tee of at least $125,000. But ballpark, you're looking at $1 million to $1.2 million in city funding, and candidly, this is the expected result. I know you do not want to hear that, but there is a cause and effect. And as long as the market is the way it is, this is the result we're going to get. There are a few encouraging signs. On the next slide, there are 23.8 million golfers in the U.S. in traditional. This is a startling statistic. There are 21.2 million that are now patronizing non-traditional golf. Facilities like Topgolf, Big Shots, Drive Shack, etc. 41% of the people that go to those facilities never play traditional golf. But where those facilities are located in cities, they have also seen an increase in traditional golf. So it seems in the early stages to be a win-win. And 70% of new golfers are coming from under the age of 34, and 35% are women. So some of the demographics are good. There are success stories out there, and they have, on the next slide, they have these following components. And some of these will seem obvious to you, but let me make this overriding point. In every city we found where they were having success, in various ways, they had been successful in adopting a comprehensive, unified plan. They got all the courses, all the locations, all the groups in the city to somehow pull together. They did it based on a master plan. That master plan balances supply and demand. In some cases, there were too many courses. In a few cases, not enough. Sometimes they weren't located in the right area. But they saw it as a market-driven exercise, and they balanced supply and demand. They created golf destinations. If you think back 2 slides to the demographics, today it's not just a male head of the household who goes to play golf. Female does, kids do, young adults do, seniors. Some of these cities are targeting veterans for golf programs. They're really doing some very sophisticated marketing, and they're creating facilities. They may go from 7 to 4, but the 4 courses they've got are terrific. And they're not just an 18-hole course. There's a practice area. There are places for kids to do things, etc. Non-traditional golf, given its growth, is a key component in every one of these cities. They are targeting, in a very sophisticated way, all of the groups I've already mentioned. Young families, women, youth, visitors, seniors, etc. They are working to include those neighborhoods in everything that's done at a facility and to make the facility a part of the neighborhood. And you can see the others, they're doing very aggressive marketing for corporate and civic groups, sophisticated online marketing, and the last one I would highlight is this, public and private partnerships. The fact is that most of these cities found that they had an imbalance in golf, but they also had land. Now, candidly, sometimes the land was not in the, quote, right part of town or where they wanted it to be. And they're out hustling, trying to bring in development of various kinds. But where they had the most success is where if they had a golf facility or any city-owned land that wasn't being fully utilized, then they repurposed it. And they found a way to tailor it with neighborhood input to make it a viable site for affordable housing, commercial development, residential development, retail, a wide range of things. So those are characteristics of successful models. And frankly, taking from that, we have just identified some options for the 4 courses that we've got. It's not all-inclusive. They're just representative. At Rebsamen, which I think is the next slide, that was once known, good course, good location, on the river, has views of downtown. It was once known as one of the premier teaching facilities in the city. It can be again. It would take less money than some to make the course high quality. It already has a large practice area. As you can see on one of the images here, quote, golf learning centers are not expensive to do. And this literally could be a premier teaching facility. It also has some land associated with a short 9. At least some consideration should be given to the option of using that land for riverfront, golf front development to generate funds. First tee, potential options here. There's a little bit of a mix of mission because First Tee is really supposed to be responsible by their own mission statement for programming, and they're tagged right now with running all of the golf operations. That is a really high-quality facility. Great clubhouse, best practice area, a really interesting little 9-hole course, and a high-quality 9-hole course. One of the options is to expand that to 18 holes. It would take some use of adjoining land. This facility, which I don't know what else to call it but First Tee right now, but this facility actually adjoins Western Hills. And if you go far enough, you get to Heineman. Now, is it a perfect alignment? No, but remember I said some of these other places are taking land that doesn't immediately jump out at you as this is the best we've got, but it is a large block of land. Does it have restrictions on it? Yes. Can they be overcome? A lot more work to understand that. But it's at least a large block of land that would allow expansion of the golf to make this an 18-hole facility. But perhaps just as important, if you're wanting to look at options, one of the options would be to go through the work on all that land and see if it could be master planned with all of the city land holdings into a mixed-use kind of facility. It could anchor the far end of the university district. It could be used for expansion at UALR. It could be used for affordable housing, corporate offices, especially those having anything to do with golf, parks, soccer fields. There are a lot of uses because it's a lot of land. And we think one of the options is to at least look at that kind of master plan. It could be an area that people don't think of it this way right now, but it's an inclusive, prosperous economic center and could even be a model for what we would do in other parts of the city. Heinemann, here's the short version on Heinemann. A significant part of that facility is located in the floodplain. So that means under the best of circumstances, if improvements are made, they may get washed downstream, and the people there tell us it floods in a significant way 8 to 10 times a year. The other thing is that there are varying degrees of restrictions within a floodplain on what kind of work you can actually do. You certainly can't do anything that would be viewed by regulatory authorities as impeding the flow of water, like building up greens, etc. The options that we came up with on this one is to repurpose the land for flood control, repurpose it as an open park, paths for biking, walking, a dirt bike course, disc golf. But any way you look at it, land in a floodplain, strategic long-term plan are natural enemies. It's hard to reconcile those. War Memorial, built in 1930, a really cool, charming course that I've enjoyed playing for a long time. But our recommendations on options, and one of your options on every one of these is to make no change whatsoever. If you assume there are going to be some changes, reevaluate this master plan and look at it in terms of an actual central park, which, oh, by the way, seems to be located in the central part of the city. Consider a 9-hole course. We've talked about non-traditional golf venues. I will tell you now with no inside information that a non-traditional golf company would be very interested in this site because it's in the center of activity. It has high visibility. It's got great visibility from highways, interstate access. I mean, it's got all the things that they're looking for. So if that were to be the case, then the balance of the land would need to be master planned. It might include some golf, it might not. But this is a high value target, if you will. And if non-traditional golf is not something you want to consider, then another option would at least be to step back, take a look at the highest and best use for that land, and it is ready-made for a public-private partnership to be able to convert at least some of that into badly needed funds for the city. I hope that is not a blizzard of information. I think we would, Dan's the smarter one of the two, but I think we would leave you that the fundamental role of municipal golf has changed. It's not anything you've done. There are probably fewer than 5% of the cities in the country that are successfully dealing with this, but the ones who are using the characteristics. We looked hard for them, but they're using the characteristics of the program that we outlined here. So that's the data, and those are some of the options that the data would suggest are available. But they do require big steps, not small ones, or the results will be small as well. And now we can do what John asked us to do, is be shorter and sit down, unless you've got questions.
Well, Phil and Dan, thank you so much for your hard work and time and attention. I know you guys have been looking at this for a long time, and we really do appreciate your expertise and research, not only our facilities, but looking across the nation as well, and providing these recommendations, and also the emphasis of making certain that this is the opportunity that requires bold change and not incremental change. So thank you.
Okay.
Director Hines.
Guys, thanks a lot for hammering this out. A couple quick questions about just some of this microphone will cooperate. I'm not as interested in the area comps, but on these regional comps, I know you guys didn't list the city and doing that on purpose, but when you talk about regionally, we're talking about climate, everything so we get apples to apples as far as weather and that kind of stuff? Because that's the biggest enemy, at least in the last year and a half with all the rain we've been
The
having.
two that we listed are within a 5-hour drive of here, so the climate's basically the same. We have others that are all similar. We used these two because one made money and one lost, and they were similar in rounds of golf.
Okay.
It's basically the operations and the demographics.
And I'm going to throw some questions out here, and this is more on economics. What does the price, we call it elasticity, on that you're seeing? Is it one where you've got to lower prices to increase revenue, or is it one where you provide a higher quality golf and a little higher price and you can maintain that over time?
It could be both.
Okay.
The golf courses that we have now, by the standards of National Golf Foundation, are considered value golf courses. The rates are in the lower end. I'm not sure that the demographics right now in Little Rock suggest that you would want to raise those. I would think that we would want to focus on improving what we have, consolidating, and presenting a situation that would bring more volume, not necessarily
courses
raise
that are
price.
left,
Yeah,
right.
but if we can get to that 30,000 round range at the present rate that we're charging, we don't have to raise those fees. And I don't think we want to do that unless we get to a point where we absolutely financially have to.
Right. Did you look at anything, and I know we've had this discussion with staff, I don't think I've had it with John Eckert since he's come on board, but, one of the things I found interesting when I've traveled and played other municipal courses is that residents get a lower rate than non-residents. And so we've been reluctant to do that, but it's as simple as showing your driver's license. If you're a Little Rock citizen, you get a different rate than somebody that's traveling from out of town. Did y'all look at any of the pricing structures
We
within those
did,
courses?
and in the details that we have that support this presentation, you would see that there are a lot of different programs like that. There are yearly annual passes. There are discounts for local residents. There's a lot of different marketing and suggestions from the different facilities. They do lots of different things. So absolutely, it's something to consider.
And as a general rule, in those markets, the golf system is consolidated. It's managed by the city. The pricing, the rates, the initiatives to bring in visitors, to bring in seniors, to give favor to residents, et cetera. That is all part of a coordinated pricing plan that the city administers.
What's you guys' opinion of just a total outsourcing? Because I know there's organizations like Billy Casper Golf that specialize in coming in and doing public-private partnership where they take over running the municipal courses with capital investment. Did you guys look into any of those options? Or maybe even a hybrid where it seems less likely if we're going to consolidate the number of holes we got that we would have to do that. But did y'all look at any of those options?
Yes, we did, and I would tell you, and I think Dan's experience is the same, but if it's not, he's about to tell you. There is no right or wrong answer to it. Management companies bring a lot of expertise. They bring buying power. But candidly, if the arrangement is not set up so that the city retains a tight performance criteria, then it can be problematic. And I think we've had courses where we used an outside management company, then we replaced them, and then 3 years later.
Replace them again. So you go through that
There's good
merry-go-round.
and bad to both. It just depends on how the deal's negotiated.
Well, and I look at it because I think probably where we've probably struggled is on our marketing, and you've really got to have a dedicated professional to be able to do that, because especially in today's, with all the internet marketing and that type of stuff, much like we do with that.
90% of all tee times are now booked online.
Right.
It shocked me, but if we don't have a good marketing presence, it's really hard.
So-
The facilities that we found that are more successful have a much more aggressive marketing campaign and using social media to a broader extent.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your help.
Thank you so much. Again, Dan and Phil, we really do appreciate your time and attention to this matter. We now have an addition to add to our agenda in item M1, authorizing expenditure for the city's economic development funds. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. That'll be added now to our agenda. We can now proceed with the review of the proposed agenda. Board members, are there any questions regarding items 1 through 18 on the consent agenda? Are there any questions? Any questions? Seeing none, are there any questions regarding items 19 through 20? Are there any questions? Any questions? Seeing none, board members, are there any questions? All right, Director Adcock.
Yes, I would like to have a presentation. I think it's covered in about 3 areas from the port on this bond on this property. I think one of them is number 19, but I would like to have a presentation that would cover all of these in our agenda today, please.
You would like a presentation today?
Yeah. Well, I think they're prepared today, so.
Yes, they are prepared. Director Brian Day.
Well, actually, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Jay Cheshire to start, Mr. Mayor, members of the board.
And thank you for the opportunity to come and talk about this project. Thank you, Director Adcock. The project, as the mayor knows, actually the Saturday morning after his election, we had an opportunity to sit and visit and actually sign a non-disclosure agreement so that we could get him engaged in leading this project, which he began doing actually that following Monday when the company was in town. And so this is a project that, as it currently stands, would invest a little over $90 million and create over 565 jobs, but it's going to be in the neighborhood of 600 jobs at an average wage of about $50,000 on 72 acres at the Little Rock Port Authority for the manufacture of firearms, primarily for the sporting as well as the hunting and law enforcement industries. And so this is a project from Czechoslovakia. It's an extremely well-known, high-quality name in the industry. As we went through this process and looking at sites, the site consultant on this project knew of this site because it's as part of Director Day's work at the Port Authority. It's what is considered a shovel-ready site, which means it's ready to be built on. And in this regard, the Port Authority Board has recommended to you, and there's going to be actually another piece of legislation coming before you in the form of an ordinance where the 72 acres from the Port Authority would be deeded to the company pursuant to the actual job creation totals. So if for whatever reason they don't meet those numbers, then obviously they will owe the city and the port funds at that point in time. But it's a 72-acre site at the port. There's a number of things on your agenda that deal with the specifics of this. The $500,000 that was just added to your agenda from the Economic Incentive Fund that the citizens of Little Rock passed in 2011 will actually go to help fund a $4.9 million road construction, Zuber Road, that not only will access this site so that this company can build this $90 million project, but also open up additional land at the port. So of the $4.9 million, the city's contribution will be $500,000. The county's contribution will be $500,000. There will be a state contribution of $1.9 million and a federal contribution of $2 million that we have not yet announced. So that's a great example of how working in concert under the leadership of the mayor, we're able to package together a project that also actually not only increases the number of jobs available for our citizens going forward, but opens up additional property for development.
Jay, how many other cities competed with us for this?
To our knowledge, a minimum of 5. We know that there were other cities that were in the original process. This site location consultant told us when we were named one of the finalists for the project that as they were going through the process, he had been on this site on 4 different occasions with other projects that unfortunately we didn't win. So he was very familiar with the site, knew that it was ready to go, knew the company was on a fast track, and basically asked the company to come look at the site because at the time Arkansas, not just Little Rock, but Arkansas was not on the radar screen for this project. And so as the company representatives have said, not only during the announcement itself, but also in interviews afterwards, once our team met with them the first time, they absolutely fell in love with Little Rock. They fell in love with the leadership of the Little Rock Port Authority, obviously the governor and his team. We basically came together as a seamless team under the mayor's leadership and led the way to winning this project over those other cities.
I know that lots of times we have citizens that question the funding that we do with you, which I am 100% behind that. So how much input have you and your group at the chamber had in all of this?
I'll let Brian answer that if he would like. When you have a project like this, and when you have a prospect looking at a specific city, somebody has to be that central point of communication to not only market what it is that we're trying to market, but then to actually go through the onerous selection process where you're providing just reams and reams and reams of information. And so if you don't have someone quarterbacking that from the very beginning, then you certainly can't, your likelihood of success is going to be far below what it should be. And so in this case, whether it was working with the mayor on specific city issues, or whether it was Ben France working with federal authorities on trying to get the grant funds, and working with the congressional delegation with Director Day and others in trying to put together the funds required to recruit that company, it takes someone that's literally waking up every single day, a team of people that are doing that to be successful. And I think the mayor has seen that action in this process. Obviously, Director Day has been a big part of this. And I want to say this because this is really important as we not only celebrate this win, but move forward. Without a shovel-ready site available, the infrastructure already in place, we wouldn't be standing here talking about a $90 million investment and 600 new jobs. That's why it's so important to support the work of the port in creating additional sites as we move forward, trying to land additional really good paying jobs.
Well, thank you to you and your group, because I know this takes a whole group working together.
Thank you.
And I know you've got one of the best people standing right beside you to work with.
Yes, we
trained
do.
him well.
Yes, you did.
But thank you to all of you for doing this, because this is 600 jobs. That's 600 families that will have an income coming from this project, and that's great.
And I think it's important because this, we talk about growing Little Rock. We talk about unifying our city and growing our city. By 5 o'clock that afternoon of the announcement, we had over 500 people go to our chamber website and make application for these jobs. As of right now, that number is over 1,200. That's what good paying jobs coming to a community will do. It's going to grow this city, it's going to grow this region, and we're all going to win. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, and bring us many, many more, please.
Any other questions, Mayor?
No, sir. Thank you so much. Any questions regarding items 19 through 20? Any questions regarding 19 through 20? Seeing none, we'll move the board members. You got another one, Joan?
Yes,
All
item
right.
21, I'd like to see the structures and see which wards they're in and see if there's any questions.
Director Hendricks?
Thank you.
Usually my comments are sort of crisp. When you look at each of these properties, most of them are in Ward 1. And I like to use that old slang of one of Blues sayings, it's a low down dirty shame that Ward 1 has to contend with this kind of stuff. That's all I got to say.
Yes, ma'am. Any questions from items 22 and 23? 22 and 23. Seeing none, we'll now move forward. I want to make certain that everyone is aware that on May the 7th, we will have a budget amendment presentation towards the end of our board meeting. We'll have a budget amendment presentation to give to you a couple examples of where our path forward for our financial stewardship. Dean, you had a question?
Just something I'd like you to look into. BJ and Joan and I were on the board when we initially looked into the problem with deer in our city. Deer. And in the last 2 days, I got a call. There was a deer on Cantrell that had been hit or had hit a car. There was one on Riverfront Drive. And we're going to need to own up to this problem and ask the Game and Fish to come and look and see what we can do about it. And there's a real danger of someone is going to hit a deer and they're going to be hurt. And if we don't acknowledge the problem and look into it, then we're making a mistake. I mean, it is. If we did a population study before, but I can promise you it is multiple times higher now. And so by our ordinance, the only people that can really help us is in that right time is the Game and Fish Commission. So I think we need to formally ask them to come back in and look at the problem and offer us some advice on what we can do.
Will do. Director Adcock.
On the Scott script, are we going to have a presentation on that? I know it is published now, and I have a copy. I don't know if the other board members have received a copy, but I have a copy, and I have several questions. And is there going to be a time when we're going to have open discussion on that?
That was not my plan. It's very open to the public. It's something that has been passed out, but definitely don't mind meeting with you individually.
Okay, I would like to request that we have a open discussion on it where we can discuss it because, as you know, with the FOIs, and we cannot discuss that among ourselves, but I think that with having all the impact from your transition team, I think that you might want to hear the board's thoughts on it also.
I will consider that.
Okay, thank
and
you.
let you know.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned. Oh, well, sorry, 1 second. BJ, Vice Mayor Warwick had a question before we adjourn.
Just very quickly, Dean brought up some kind of interesting memories of the deer population several years ago, and it was a mixed review from citizens versus hunters versus property owners. So if we have a discussion about it when they come, we need to make sure that we invite the public to come with their comments because it was really interesting to know the thoughts about the people in regards to hunting deer in the areas where they're most populated. So just keep that in mind when we set up the meeting for them.
With all that being said, meeting adjourned.